What's up, everybody? It's Young here with a Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer analysis. To everyone's surprise, we were shown a brand new gameplay trailer of the highly anticipated game during the PlayStation Experience event, and I would like to go ahead and analyze it. Now, instead of analyzing the trailer in its original form, I will instead be analyzing the custom, re-edited trailer that I made where I arranged every shot in sequential order of events as they happen in the original game. You can find that video up on my channel right now, so be sure to check it out if you haven't done so yet, as it makes the trailer much easier to follow and analyze. Anyway, there is a lot to talk about, so without further ado, let's dive right into it. Most of the trailer takes place during the intro portion of the game, during Avalanche's assault on Midgar's Sector 1 Mako reactor. The first shot of the trailer shows us the train station in Sector 1 of Midgar, from which Cloud and Avalanche emerge for the very first time. The fact that there are two soldiers here is likely a reference to the fact that the original game's first battle is Cloud against two Shinra Soldiers. Also, in the opening sequence of the original game, Biggs and Jesse, two members of the eco-terrorist group Avalanche, are the first ones to emerge from the train, and they take down the two train conductors guarding the station. So it could be a reference to that as well. We actually get to witness the remake version of this scene in the next shot, although instead of fighting train conductors, Biggs and Jesse fight Shinra soldiers. Here we see Biggs pinning the soldier down and Jesse kicking the guy right in the gut. The kick is actually a cool little callback to the original game. After they take care of the soldiers, Barrett, leader of Avalanche, and Wedge, another member of Avalanche, eventually emerge as well. In this shot, we get a very nice and clear look at Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, who have been recreated beautifully and faithfully from the original game. As the three start making their way towards the gate that leads into Midgar's Sector 1 reactor, we eventually see our very own Cloud Strife as the last one of the group to emerge from the train. What's cool is that if you compare the sequence to the original, you will realize that they play out almost exactly the same.
Okay, let's move.
And here we are shown a very nice close-up of Cloud, who has also been faithfully recreated from the original game with astounding detail. And the best part is that this is all being rendered in-game, which is pretty amazing. Before Barrett and Cloud joins the rest of the crew, he tells Cloud, "We are paying you more than a few gil, you best be worth it."
We're paying you more than a few gil. You best be worth it.
In reference to the fact that at this stage, Cloud is nothing more than a simple mercenary for hire who only cares about getting paid. Now, it's hard to say if the voice actor for Garrett here is the same one as in Advent Children, but to my ears, he sounds a little different.
What up, boo? It's Barrett. I am the man. Oil, Cloud. I just found the biggest damn oil field you ever seen. Survey is done, so I should be able to get out there and see Marlene soon. You let her know, all right, Spikey?
We're paying you more than a few gil. You best be worth it.
This shot also shows us a clear view of Barrett's character model, who has also been realized with amazing detail. The sunglasses are definitely new, don't know why the hell he'd be wearing sunglasses at night, but to each his own. And the tattoo on his left arm is more reminiscent of the one in Advent Children than the one in the original game. But other than these minor things, this is still the same Barrett we all know and love. While that's happening, Jesse and Biggs reach the gate that leads to the Sector 1 reactor, and Jesse starts working on hacking into the gate security system, during which the two characters exchange some dialogue about Cloud. Like in the original game, Jesse shows some apprehension about letting Cloud, a former Shinra soldier, work alongside them in their operation, while Biggs assures her that Cloud quit being a Shinra soldier and is now working for Avalanche.
Still don't see why we brought a Shinra soldier along. No way he'd throw all that away for us. What's his name, anyway?
Cloud Strife. And he says it's former soldier. Look, heavy security like this, you want a professional.
Eventually, Barrett and Cloud join the crew, and Jesse manages to unlock the gate. The crew start making their way into the Mako reactor, but before that happens, Wedge exchanges some dialogue with Cloud. In the original game, he actually doesn't say anything at this particular moment, but he does have something to say in the remake, which results in him getting absolutely wrecked by Cloud's emo attitude.
You're doing this for the planet, same as us.
Not interested.
Now, I've gotta say this, Wedge's voice is fucking awful. It's like listening to a prepubescent Yoda, just terrible. There is still a while to go until the game comes out though, so here's hoping that they will use some of that time to change his voice to something more adequate. As for Cloud's voice, this seems to be the same voice actor who has voiced the English version of Cloud all these years, Steve Burton, and it sounds fine from what I've heard so far.
I think I want to be forgiven. More than anything.
Same as us.
Not interested.
Barrett then calls out to Wedge, and in this shot we get a clear view of Barrett's scar, another small but significant detail of the original character design that returns for the remake. The crew eventually traverses deep into the Sector 1 reactor and manages to set the bomb that will blow it up, but in doing so they trigger an alarm, summoning the Guard Scorpion, the first boss in the original game, which has been gorgeously recreated for the remake. The general shape is pretty much the same as the original, but there are also some significant overhauls that resulted from the vastly enhanced graphical fidelity. Throughout the sequence, we also get a better full body shot of Barrett, and you can see once again that the development team has done an awesome job of bringing Barrett from the original game to life for the remake. He's got the same jacket and pants, he's got the same braces around his waist, the same belt, the same gloves, and he's even got the same dog tag around his neck. At the same time, like the Guard Scorpion, his design has also undergone some revisions. All his clothes and gear in general have been retouched a bit to look a bit more modern. His body has been reproportioned to be more normal human-like. His Gatling gun arm has received longer barrels for a more modern look, which oddly enough contrasts Advent Children's design of the original game's Barrett. And the Gatling gun is now situated over some kind of arm cover, which wasn't there in the original Barrett design, and is akin to his new design in Advent Children. He's also now got some pouches around his legs, and as mentioned before, he is nonsensically wearing sunglasses at this time of night. Overall, his design captures the spirit of the original while touching up certain areas for modernization, and the results are fantastic in my opinion. And now for the good stuff, actual gameplay footage. What we're looking at here is most likely the sequence from the original game directly following the destruction of Sector 1's Mako reactor, which leaves Cloud and company trapped in a debris-filled interior. This sequence is actually very brief in the original game, but it looks like it's been somewhat expanded upon in the remake. Now, both versions do retain the part in which Jesse uses a small bomb to blow open a barred door that leads to Sector 8, after which the team splits up to make their escape. Now before moving on, I would like to point out that in motion, Final Fantasy VII Remake's gameplay looks a hell lot like Final Fantasy 15 in terms of graphics, the animations, the way the camera moves, etc. Particularly the way the camera pans as Cloud squeezes into small spaces, very reminiscent of Episode to Sky if you ask me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this game uses the same game engine as Final Fantasy 15, and the results so far are pretty damn impressive. Anyway, moving along, after they blow the barred door open, the team splits up and makes their way through Sector 8 to escape pursuit from Shinra Soldiers after successfully blowing up the Sector 1 reactor, leading into some footage of Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat. Here is where the remake will divide fans of the original game. Final Fantasy VII Remake ditches the original turn-based combat in favor of something more akin to Final Fantasy Versus 13's seamless menu-based active combat. I say Versus 13 instead of 15 because combat was actually changed significantly with the renaming, and Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat and interface definitely resemble Versus 13's more. Now, the remake does bring back interface options from the original game like attack, magic, summon, items, and defend, but players will now be selecting them on the fly during active combat. Also returning are HP, MP, and Limit, which pretty much confirm the return of familiar systems like Materia and Limit Breaks. The game also allows players to control multiple party members at a time, although now that combat is active rather than turn-based, doing so will involve switching between party members on the fly and controlling them one at a time while the AI takes care of the rest. This is yet another way that combat is more similar to Versus 13, as the ability to control other party members was removed in 15. Now, I mentioned the return of Limit, but Limit Breaks seem to work somewhat differently in this game. Notice how in this next shot, Cloud is using the Limit Break ability from the original game Braver, and yet the limit bar is completely empty. What's actually allowing Cloud to use this ability seems to be this mysterious bar found underneath Cloud's name, which, based on what I've seen from the trailer, fills up with every attack the character lands. It's been confirmed recently that this is actually a reworked version of the ATB gauge, and because of how different it works from the original game, its name might be changed, but for now, let's keep calling it the ATB gauge. Throughout this footage, the only time we see characters use limit break-like abilities is when the ATB gauge is completely filled up. For example, when Cloud uses Braver here, we can see that the limit break bar is empty, but the ATB gauge is full and glowing red. We can see Barrett using what seems to be the limit break ability from the original game, Big Shot, and like Cloud, his limit bar is empty, but the ATB gauge is full and glowing red. Same deal with this next shot, in which we see Cloud using what is either a new ability or a new take on the limit break cross slash. Once again, the limit bar is completely empty while the ATB gauge is completely full and glowing red. This can only mean that the limit break system will undergo some significant changes. Perhaps some of the limit break abilities from the original game are no longer considered limit breaks and have instead been demoted, so to speak, to abilities that players can perform by filling up the ATB gauge, while limit breaks encompass more powerful attacks like Omni Slash and possibly brand new powerful attacks. I'm not really sure, just throwing stuff out there. All I know is that I'm seeing various limit break abilities from the original game being performed not by filling up the limit bar, but rather by filling up the ATB gauge. If you have any theories regarding the combat system that you'd like to share with us, let us know in the comments below. As for my overall thoughts on combat, I think it looks awesome so far, but I definitely don't think anyone should expect this game to feel or play like the original. It's called a remake for a reason. While the game will obviously use the original as its foundation when it comes to story and gameplay elements, what's built upon that foundation will definitely be completely new. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a modern new take on a classic. It's a risky venture for sure, and some of you may not necessarily favor this approach, but right now all we can do is wait and hope that they know what the hell they're doing. I just hope that they'll be able to differentiate Final Fantasy VII Remake's mechanics enough from Final Fantasy XV's or Versus 13's, because from what little I've seen, the similarities are striking. Something else I would like to note about these combat sequences is the particle effects. Once again, very reminiscent of Final Fantasy XV, further indicating that Final Fantasy VII Remake makes use of the same game engine. Finally, before we move on, I would like to talk about where within Sector 8 this location is exactly. I believe you run across this location in the original game after Cloud and Avalanche split up, and after Cloud stumbles upon Aerith for the first time. The next section after that is an area of Sector 8 that is very reminiscent of what we're seeing here in the remake trailer, featuring a very similar fountain and very similar looking archways. Now, in the original game, there are no encounters with Shinra Soldiers in this area, so this particular battle sequence is definitely new to the remake. After battling the Shinra Soldiers, Cloud makes his way further into Sector 8, past the fountain area and into a streets area, similarly to the original game. Notice the wreckage on the left here, which is clear indication that some kind of explosion took place nearby, namely the Sector 1 Mako reactor explosion. Now, if you wanted more evidence that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy XV use the same game engine, notice how this area looks very similar to the towns at night seen throughout Final Fantasy Versus 13 footage. Moving on, as Cloud traverses this area, like in the original game, Cloud eventually becomes surrounded by Shinra Soldiers, which players can choose to fight. Here we see more of Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat. And this shot in particular shows Cloud performing a new technique of sorts that is not in the original game. Like before, the limit bar is empty while the new nameless bar is full and glowing red. So this is likely another one of those ATB gauge abilities that Cloud can perform in this game. Moving along, we have a shot showing a very nice close-up of Shinra Soldiers, and they look pretty damn incredible, especially when you consider that this is all being rendered in-game. Just an astounding amount of detail. We've come a long way, haven't we? The same could be said for Cloud, whose new design, like Barrett's, captures the spirit of the artwork from the original game while modernizing certain aspects. Just absolutely beautiful. After battling a few of these soldiers, Cloud eventually starts experiencing some weird flashes, which weren't in the original game at this particular moment, although I'm thinking that this may have something to do with the inner voice he hears in the original game that tries to remind him of his original memories and self. But anyway, he makes a run for it and leaps onto the train, just like in the original game. Not gonna lie, though, Shinra Soldiers might have worse aim than Star Wars Stormtroopers, and that's saying a lot. Anyway, following this sequence, we see Cloud making a safe exit. And now that we have analyzed the main chunks of the trailer, I would like to move on to analyzing these bursts of very brief shots, all of which are from the first trailer released during E3 2015. Let's begin with this one here, which shows what is definitely the outskirts of Shinra Corporation, perhaps somewhere in Sector 4 of Midgar, as can be noted by the 3 big lights here visible from this sector, although in Crisis Core it's possible to see similar lights in Sector 8, so we might just as well be looking at Sector 8, one of those two. Next up, I want to talk about this burst shot, which shows what looks to be a train map of sorts that likely resides within the inner walls of this metro seen in the E3 2015 trailer, with the last stop being a place called South Edge, which is most likely the name of a section in Midgar, judging by the fact that in the original game you can actually see sections of the city labeled Edge, like the train station used to infiltrate the Sector 1 Mako reactor in Midgar at the beginning of the game, which is labeled North Edge Station. If you consider the fact that North Edge Station resides near the Sector 1 reactor, indicating that the Sector 1 reactor marks north, then my guess is that South Edge is somewhere in Sector 5, which marks south. Interesting to note is that Sector 5 is significant in that this is where Aerith's church resides. Next up, let's take a look at this burst shot showing flowers withered on the ground. They sure as hell look like the flowers found in Aerith's church, so this shot probably takes place somewhere nearby. It's definitely gotta be Sector 5, I know that. Now, if we look back at the E3 2015 version of this shot, you can actually see a little before the feather falls on the puddle, and if you look closely at the reflection, it's possible to see an angelic statue of sorts. This is likely some kind of symbolism or foreshadowing, with the flowers representing Aerith and the one-winged angel statue here representing Sephiroth. As if the statue wasn't enough of a hint, a dark-colored feather reminiscent of Sephiroth's wing lands right on top of the puddle. We are then shown a couple shots showing what may initially seem like Shinra soldiers, but may in fact be members of Avalanche. How so, you ask? Well, first of all, if you look at the more extensive E3 2015 version of this footage, you can see more clearly that these two soldiers seem to be hiding from the helicopter above rather than cooperating with it. Notice how the two soldiers are leaning against the wall to avoid the helicopter's headlight. Furthermore, their gear just doesn't fit the style of Shinra soldiers. Now, something interesting that website thelivestream.net pointed out in their analysis of the E3 2015 Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer was that a similar outfit is worn by members of Avalanche in Final Fantasy VII Before Crisis. Notice how both wear caps and goggles, similar styles of jackets, and they both even wear red bandanas, an important symbol of Avalanche, around their left arm. So the theory is that these soldiers might in reality be members of Avalanche who are in the middle of some kind of infiltration mission. Now, if this is indeed true, then it's hard to say what this is all about, as this sequence was definitely not in the original game. Is it a flashback of sorts, perhaps? Could we see this remake cover some of the story found in various Final Fantasy VII spin-offs? Or perhaps cover completely new story materials to further expand the lore? That's certainly a possibility, but for now, it's nothing more than a theory. This is then followed by this brief shot of what some of you may initially assume to be Aerith's eyes, but this footage was also featured in the E3 2015 trailer. And if you look at that trailer, you will see that the eyes belong to this little girl playing in Sector 6's Green Park, which is where Aerith at some point in the game reminisces about Zack and Cloud's company. As for what she's looking at, her eyes seem to be reflecting some kind of green energy that looks very similar to the burst of emissions that Mako reactors make from time to time. So my assumption is that she is witnessing one such moment. The trailer then shows us another burst of shots, this time of Midgar slums, along with brief glimpses of Barrett and Cloud traversing through it, all of which were also shown more extensively in the E3 2015 trailer. By now, they have most likely successfully accomplished their operation to blow up Midgar Sector 1 reactor, and have probably escaped from Sector 8, so perhaps Cloud and Barrett are traversing through Sector 7's slums on their way to Tifa's bar and restaurant, 7th Heaven, which also serves as Avalanche's base of operations. And thus concludes my analysis of all the important footage found in this trailer in sequential order. All that's left to analyze are the logo of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is pretty self-explanatory, and this excerpt at the end that says that the game will be coming to PlayStation 4 first, which means it's probably coming to other platforms like Xbox One and hopefully PC later down the line. And thus ends the trailer, and with that, I would like to conclude this trailer analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Let us know in the comments below if you noticed anything that I didn't, or if I made any mistakes you would like to correct. And to be further updated on Final Fantasy VII Remake, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out!